We are Makilala TV, the first Filipino-American TV talk show in the New York metro area. Get to know us as we talk to the community leaders, innovators, advocates, and emerging artists who affect Filipino-American life.
Hello, my name is Cristina Pastor. On behalf of my co-hosts, Jen Furrer and Rachelle Ocampo, welcome to Makilala. Take a look at the photos on your screens. The male on the left is John Rostad, a legislator from Canada. He is a real person. The male on the right identifies himself on social media as David Mark Conley, describing himself as, quote, a man of integrity. Conley uses the images of John Rostad on his page. Conley had been communicating with a Filipino grandma and asking her for money. Conley's account has been disabled, and Instagram's scammer warning had given it a fake stamp. In today's episode, we would like to highlight the issue of catfishing, also known as internet romance scams. According to the FBI, these scammers, they could be individuals, or they could be syndicates, or they could be women, create the illusion of romance to gain the trust of their victims. They may even propose marriage, which never happens. Then they begin to ask for money. Our guests today are two very knowledgeable experts in our community. They will help us understand why these things happen to certain women. We have with us Dr. Lirio Covey, a professor of clinical psychology at Columbia University, and family law attorney Jhanice Domingo of Einhorn, Barbarito, Frost, and Botwinick Law Office. They will shed light on the issue of catfishing and share their insights on how victims can get help. Welcome to Makilala, Dr. Covey and Jhanice. Dr. Covey, let me start with you.
Okay.
Why do you think some women form emotional connection with strangers? And who are these women?
Well,
Dr. Covey.
Yes. Hi, Cristina. The who is, I would say, characteristically, it's been, talked about before, they tend to be lonely, okay? They have poor self-esteem, all right? And they probably are also, they have a type of person who has a desire to please. And according to, the reports, they tend to be single, but not necessarily. Is that the kind of characteristic you're looking for?
Right?
What's that? Say that again.
Single, you mean they could be widowed or married people?
For sure. And that's right. I do not want to characterize in terms of age, etc., because it could happen to anybody. Okay, but go ahead.
That's right. Let me ask Jhanice now. Jhanice, is catfishing a serious crime?
That's a great question, Cristina. First, maraming salamat for having me on the show today. To answer your question, I think that most people assume that just because catfishing is a bad act, that it must be illegal or it must be criminal. But the reality is not every bad act is illegal or criminal, and catfishing in and of itself is technically not illegal or a crime. However, the catfishing involves an illegal activity, which it often does, a victim can take legal action or file a criminal complaint. So in the context of internet romance scams that we're talking about, the purpose of the deception is usually to obtain something of benefit, right? Whether it's money, property, personal bank information, etc. So in those types of cases, there may be a cause of action for fraud, for defamation, sexual violation of a minor, and those activities have legal consequences. So the takeaway is, in order for catfishing to be actionable, there has to be an illegal activity, and there has to be some harm or injury or damage caused to the victim.
That's right. Let's get any further. Let's hear from Jen. Jen has a personal story about a relative who almost fell victim to a scam like this. Jen, let's hear your story.
Yes, actually know two people. One is a young kid, maybe a teenager who fell, like you could call fell in love through Instagram and ended up sending bank information. And then another one is a tita who's about in her 70s, 50, it started out like last year, like towards the summer. And it was just like a casual conversation and it grew into something intimate or romantic, but everything is just through online, like, and then before you know it, it's hard for her to fathom that it wasn't real. No matter how many, family members were telling her, doesn't make any sense, it's not real. And then to the point that, she felt bad for the other, for the, I would just call maybe the boyfriend online, that she felt bad. And she ended up, like they always come up with sub story of this is successful people outside the country, and then all of a sudden they don't have access to their wealth or to their finances, and they need help even to just to buy anything. So and they ask for gift cards, like interesting gift cards like iTunes gift card. Yes, Cristina.
In both cases, then, money change hands in both your stories.
Yes, the first one, she's a 16-year-old, and like gave a checking account information, and she up to like reported to the cops, and she was still, and to the end believed that she was real. And the second one, a gift card, like I'm not sure how much, maybe 50, 100, I'm not sure exactly, on an iTunes gift card, and I guess that's how they do it. But then to the end, it was just hard for the family members, I guess, that to understand how the whole thing happened. And then when the person finally realized that it wasn't real, it was even harder to like, why me? Like how did mean, like I have no idea how these things happen.
I think Rachelle has a similar story about, is it your grandma, Rachelle?
Yeah. So I about 5 years ago, my Lola, or who I call Mama Mila, she had an online boyfriend. She's in her 70s now, but the guy had a Facebook page who showed that he was an older white male. And at around the same time, she was also approached by like 3 or 4 other profiles of medical doctors, engineers. So she talked to that person for about a month. Um, she says to practice her English and just for some companionship. But she would be mostly in contact with them through Facebook Messenger, like audio. And she started seeing some red flags. And I was like, so what happened? Like, did you like what did you exchange money? Like, what did you do? So she said that he supposedly delivered a box of presents, like Louis Vuitton bags and other gifts in the mail to her, and that he needed $600 for the post office to release it. And she told him, it's like, no, you gave me those presents, you pay for it. And then
That's right.
there's also times that he had the different names, different pictures that she would give him. She accidentally Facebooked on like a video him, and an African American guy picked up.
Wow.
So she saw the person
by mistake,
by accident, yeah, and he immediately hung up. And then lastly, he asked for a Target gift card, and then she explained that she doesn't have any money, so she can't give you anything. And then that's when he stopped. He stopped talking after she said that she doesn't have money.
And just to add, I know that the examples that we provided are about women victims, but anybody can be the target of a scam. And victims are not just women. Men also fall victim to this. The LGBTQ community is affected by this. Young people, old people alike, all can be victims. And this is exactly what the modus operandi of these scammers is, that they will target anybody who is vulnerable. And as Dr. Lirio mentioned earlier in the program, I think that a lot of times people who are eager to connect with someone, maybe after the death of a loved one, as Cristina mentioned, if you're a widow, or maybe somebody who's looking to connect with somebody after the end of a marriage, you just got divorced and you're sort of looking for that connection. Anyone who's in a vulnerable stage in their life, unfortunately, are susceptible to this. But it's important to understand and for the viewers to realize that it really couldn't be anybody. And you just have to be very careful.
I think it's time. We don't have a lot of time.
What is the best way for a family? What is the best?
Cristina, I'd like to contribute to talk about the underlying process. I'm glad that you all have given those examples. So that's really very helpful. But the question really is, why does this happen? How is this happening? Okay, first of all, we know, I like to call him the perpetrator. Okay, he goes around the web looking for vulnerable people. So these are very smart, these are very smart people. They look for who's vulnerable. And then they target. What they use as their weapon is their mechanisms of producing gratifying, pleasurable feelings of that person. And the gratifying, rewarding feelings or actions like giving gifts, false gifts, are done frequently, continuously, and constantly with words of affection, romance, it develops into that, right? That's wonderful.
That's right, yeah.
Slowly, you're vulnerable, you have nobody else, you love that. Yes. It feeds your brain with wonderful neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin.
Dr. Covey, you have that in your brain, but what about common sense? Don't you have that in your brain too?
That's it. When you become targeted and you become involved in what I'm getting at as a level of dependence. I hate the word they use, addiction, but it's really a form of addiction. It's addiction to those reward systems, okay? And when you are dependent and addicted, what happens is you need it. And you have to do actions that will make it continue to happen. Along with that, because your brain is compromised, what happens? Your judgment suffers. You lose judgment. Forget about common sense. It doesn't work anymore. So what do? How do you intervene? How does it stop? Do you want me to?
How does the family intervene?
Yes. Well, first of all, there's already loss of judgment. And the desire to give money to please the perpetrator, the romance person, is primordial. It's the most prior thing in the person's life. Just like an alcoholic or a drug addict, they forget about everything else. It's the drug, it's the alcohol that becomes most important. So they have to continue doing what they have to do towards that person. They're primary. The family is secondary, okay? And there's also feelings of, I have to do this. What can be done? First of all, the only way there are probably two ways that this can stop. And the first and the one way is not eventually. It will stop because the victim has nothing more to give.
Yeah.
And if the victim has nothing more to give, the perpetrator will say, goodbye, I don't need you anymore, okay?
Okay, and what is the second way?
Another way it could stop is what's done in the addiction treatment community. It's intervention, family and friends intervention. You get that person, and then you're a community of people, and you really intervene. You try to talk, but also try to get across that lack of judgment, and
that's right.
That's it.
Sometimes, some people who've been victimized, they need like proof, like tangible proof. And there are a lot, I'm sure, Attorney Domingo. I mean, I'm right, Dr. Lirio, whatever you said was like heads on, like to the point. But sometimes it comes to the point, and even though they're not giving anything more, they're still believing that person's gonna prove, everybody else wrong, and that person is real. So if family members have to find ways to find proof that this person isn't real. And I think Attorney Domingo, you could there's like a lot of information on FBI website and then how to report a person, how to identify. You become like an investigator. So what can we do as family members to gather proofs, like what we showed earlier during the segment?
Right. So Jen, you're exactly right, because once a victim is so invested in the scammer, he or she is going to be in complete denial, right? So
Right.
some of the things that a family member or a friend can do is, number one, you can try to investigate the identity of the scammer. There's actually a number of anti-scam websites out there now where people have this person may have been reported in the past. So if you get lucky, maybe you can get some information about the scammer and you can present that to the victim. One other thing that you can do is you can share with them real life stories of scams, because I think, especially for the elderly, we're in a different time, in a different age. You know, these types of scams didn't happen during their time. So you almost have to educate them and tell them and give them the information that this type of thing happens, and you know, it happens all the time. Point out discrepancies in the perpetrator's representations and stories, because once you're in it, it's very difficult for you to take yourself out of it and see a lot of these things that are going on. But if you have somebody who is not biased, or you know, a neutral third party who can kind of point these out, that would be helpful. So what do you do if you ask me a question? What do you do if you're a victim of this type of a scam? If there is a crime that's been committed, you've provided money, or you've done other things or what have you that are actionable, you can go to your local police department and report the crime. If the police tell you they can't help because there's not enough evidence, because a lot of the problem is identifying who the perpetrator actually is. A lot of times we don't even know who they are, where they reside, where they're contacting the victim from. You can still go to your county prosecutor's office. You can even go directly to the Attorney General's Office Division of Criminal Justice, because they have resources available. They've done research, a lot of investigation that may be relevant to your case. The FBI.
Jhanice, what is usually the success rate of such cases? Do they prosper? Do they put people in jail behind bars?
Well,
what if the person is wrong?
Yeah, so it depends on the degree of the scam, right, and what the damages are. So if you are successful in prosecuting such a crime that has been committed, you're looking at non-custodial probation to prison. Sometimes a court can order restitution. So if you've given money away due to a fraud and they are prosecuted, you can get restitution from the court. I think that the important takeaway here is that, nowadays, because people have fake profiles all the time in social media, it's just very common. Everyone really just has to be vigilant. I'm sure if I asked, show of hands, who has gotten a friend request from somebody that they're already friends with on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times I think because we're so busy, we just ignore it, but I don't. I contact my friend and said, I got this, friend request from you. I report it. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they all have mechanisms where you can report this. And as I want to just go back to what Jen was mentioning before, the FBI also has an internet crime complaint center where you can actually file a complaint yourself, or you can file a complaint on behalf of a family member or friend who's been victimized. So there are ways.
I think you did that, Jen, right? Did you do that, Jen? Did your family?
Yeah, I think the family member did that. Filed a complaint at the FBI, the Federal Trade Commission, reported to the Instagram, reported to Facebook. And it took like January, maybe like 5 months before she got a reply. It took 5 months to get a reply, but that was the tangible of saying, Dr. Lirio, some people, even though you go through and tell them that these are red flags, they need a tangible proof to show them that, and it's so sad after they find out that they were betrayed. What do you do next?
Yeah.
I like Dr. Lirio's observation where she said it is an addiction. I never thought of it as some kind of an addiction. Dr. Lirio, Dr. Covey, do you suggest that families should keep a tight lid on the person's finances so that she cannot just give away money to other
At
people?
what point? Before it's discovered or after the scam is discovered?
After it's been discovered by the family members.
If that's possible, I suppose, if that's possible, sometimes you can't do that, or the victim won't allow you to do that. But that would be a good thing to do. But I would like to respond to another question. I think it was Jen who brought it up. What happens when the scam is discovered? What happens to the person, to the victim?
Right.
What I'd like to bring up is the other negative consequence of a scam, even when it is discovered, in that usually very often, the person who's scammed is already in a fragile mental, psychological situation. Discovering that you have been scammed will make that mental health issue even more problematic. So it's more sad, so I think in addition, there has to be some kind of psychological support, help after a scam has occurred.
Yeah, but Filipinos, it's hard. Most Filipinos, it's hard for you to tell them to go see a psychologist or a counselor.
Or a friend, or your it's just that.
Or a priest.
It can be a friend.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a professional, but the point of giving support to that person is important. The person has become tender, wounded, hurt, even more than they were before. So that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that was really my concern, is the emotional toll of
Yes.
people who've given so much of their heart, and not even just money, but emotional toll.
Yes.
How do we comfort them?
They're hurt people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, even though they've even given proofs already. I mean, I read somewhere before the segment that they're still so attached and they're still waiting for that person to show up, even though, back in their minds, they know it's not real, but their hope is still there.
Remember what I said. There's a loss of judgment. So you're talking about intellectual, cognitive responses to really an emotional issue. And that is why that often may not happen.
Well, can we sue the social media giants for not protecting our elderly?
Try it.
I mean, what do you think, Attorney Domingo? I feel like
our internet profiles should not contain a lot of personal information, correct?
Correct.
So
I mean, I think
these scammers are looking at people who are widowed or people who are single, unmarried, and they will train their sites on. They will probably friend them and then have a conversation with them. That's how it starts.
It grows.
And look, in a lot of these social media platforms, you do have the option to set your privacy settings however you want. So if you are the type of person that has a privacy setting on your profile that's set to public, well, be careful about what information you're sharing for public consumption, right? We live in a world where nowadays more and more people are turning to dating websites to meet folks. We are sharing our lives on social media, family, friends. Be careful as to what you're sharing, because sometimes you're giving information as to where you live, where you work, so these are the types of things that trollers are looking at to try to get to know you, to know what you like, what you don't like, so that they can enamor you, right? So that they can gain your trust and your confidence. And there are things that we can do. And one of the other things, I don't think it's been mentioned yet, because we're talking about what's actionable. A lot of times it's not just about money. What people have done too is, because they've gained your confidence and trust, they try to get you to share secrets, or even sometimes lewd and compromising videos and photos of yourself that they're going to use later on to blackmail you to extort money. So be careful what you're sharing. It really is a point of, we just have to be very, very cautious.
Yeah, we have to emphasize that one. Be careful what you share, because they could use it to blackmail you. I mean, you never know who's on the other side.
Right.
That's right. What is also dangerous is when they share information of members of.
We lost Christine. Yeah, like members of the family. That's, how do you protect that when, I think everyone who's been victimized going through this become like resistant. I mean, like thinking twice about posting anything on social media afterwards. I mean, family members.
Related to that, what I find I've experienced is that even if you put out only a certain limit on your privacy and issues, sometimes you will get comments in your posts where somehow people reveal things that you would rather not have revealed, like where you went, what happened to you, where you graduated, where you're working, things like that. So we do have to be careful. I have asked some people, for example, if they put something that I wish they hadn't, I will contact them and say, please delete that.
I am so sorry. I think my VPN comes out. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, I was asking Jhanice, how can you tell if one is a scammer? What if there is somebody who just wanted to befriend you?
Sure. I mean, look, I think you have to kind of think about the warning signs and some of the red flags and trust your gut. I always say, watch out for the twos, TOO. Too much too soon, too good to be true, too difficult to meet in person, too hard to find on the internet. Because if you think about it, you meet someone online and after just a few contacts, they're professing their love and strong feelings for you. Probably something to be suspicious about. Con artists are experts. They have one goal, and that's to gain your trust and your love in a very short amount of time. So they will listen to you intently. They will say all of the
right. Oh my God. Okay, I think thank you. I think we're running out of time. I just saw Rachelle's very nice face making the signal. Anyway, that's what we always say on the show. 30 minutes is never enough. So thank you. That was a very enlightening episode. And I'd like to thank Jen and Rachelle for sharing their personal stories. And of course, thank you also to Dr. Covey and Jhanice Domingo for answering all our questions. I hope those of you who are watching and who have relatives who are in some kind of an internet relationship, I hope they will understand that if money is involved, it's the biggest red flag of all. It's time to cut off communication and stay away from the computer. That's it for today, and hope to see you again. Thank you for watching.
Christina, for inviting me and everything. Thank you I'm happy to meet every one of you. Thank you.
Oh, we're happy to meet you too. And Jhanice, great seeing you.
Thanks for telling, Christina. Thank you.